South Asian Interconnections is another of my colleagues, Mr. Rajiv Panda. He has been working on this for since 2012. So I purposely let him take the last one so that in case we missed out some things, he would cover up for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Batra. Because since most of the speaker has touched upon why we should interconnect and little bit of the technical side, and also speaking on the technology that probably we can look into. So let me just limit myself not to technical aspect, right, because I don't want to bore people with technical thing at this stage. Let me focus on the policy aspects, because what I have seen over the years that sometimes, when engineers discuss these things at a common table, there is a fair bit of consensus among the engineers, and they pretty much understand that why such interconnection should be there and what are the benefits and so on and so forth. But we also see that sometimes these things takes quite a bit of time to sink at the policy level and actually translate into the real projects and actions. So let me limit my focus on the policy aspects and why some of these things takes time to get it implemented, and what has been our learnings in the South Asia to address some of these policy issues. Because to me, it seems that these are the most important aspects. The first point I would like to make is that, when we talk about large scale, the transmission infrastructures, it goes without saying that the sharing of cost is a major concern. Because how does the cost get shared between the countries and how the benefits get shared between the countries become a major concern. And we have seen this particular thing in South Asia as well as in many other parts of the globe, where the governments takes their own time to settle the issues related to sharing of the cost. So what I would make my first proposition is that it is very important to find out a way or a mechanism where the benefits are clearly defined and the cost is fairly shared between the parties, because this builds the confidence and the trust among the parties, and then it translates into the real projects. And there are some examples one can quote from ASEAN region and also from the South Asian region, but I don't want to get into the details. But as a matter of principle, when we talk about interconnecting GCC, SAARC, and the ASEAN grid, which is a very large continent, so to speak. So it is important to have some principles focusing on that. My second point will be on the market side. There was a fair bit of discussion on the market side and how India is moving fast on the market development and so on and so forth. And quite arguably, even in South Asia also, out of 3,500 megawatt of trade that is happening, roughly 1,000 megawatt happens on a commercial basis. So there is a tendency to move towards a market form of trade. However, there were some points by the speaker from Sri Lanka that the power markets are not developed in other countries, which is a fact, because most of the other countries doesn't have sophisticated market structure which India has. But I mean, one could wish that if you have a power market, the benefits could be much more, because the competition brings down the prices. But looking at the things as it is, we conducted a mock exercise in BBN region, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal, and they are the single buyer, so we didn't change anything as far as single buyer is concerned, and we allowed it to bid in a mock exercise, mock platform, and despite that limited competition that we have, one could wish there is a fairly more competitive structure. There was consumer surplus and the producer surplus is a measure of benefits of the participating countries, and through our exercise we found that the total surplus was 333 billion INR under the unified mode and 323 billion under the sequential mode. So the point I'm making is that while each country takes its own time, to reform, and it's up to the prerogative of each country when they take a call on the power market reforms and so on and so forth. Even with that structure, you can also start thinking about a market structure as far as cross-border is concerned. You can still manage your own issues inside the domestic aspect of the power market. And why I'm saying that, because it's also a learning exercise, because when you learn how the other markets function, you also try to grasp some of the market insights, how a market operates and so on and so forth. Because when one talk about the ingredients, it depends what kind of vision you have. Otherwise one could list out maybe 20-30 ingredients that you should have: system operation, you should have settlement and so on and so forth. But just to start with, you could start with some minimum requirements which can actually lay the foundation for trading on the markets. My view has been on the cross-border transmission infrastructure is that my view is that we need to have a mix of long-term, medium-term and short-term contracts. I don't necessarily think that only short-term contracts will be able to bring such large-scale investments. So we are very clear when we talk about market that such large-scale infrastructure will require a mix of long-term, medium and short-term contracts. I don't think that only short-term will be able to create enough incentive or the momentum at the level of the investors to get such large project financed. Some minimum ingredients, I think it was already talked about: the connectivity, open access, imbalance settlement, and those aspects of course needs to be put in place. I also want to make a point that when we finance such large scale let's say trans-regional interconnections, I think it will be important to also put a price on the green energy or the clean energy, because sometimes those pricing on the carbon and so on and so forth also improves the viability of the projects. Because from the beginning of the session, a lot of argument has been made on the RE integration and so on and so forth. But let's say when you talk about, let's say, long distance HVDC cables between countries, maybe the pricing could also have an environmental component which may actually help in improving the financial feasibility of such interconnections. The another point I would like to make is that when a particular cross-border interconnection is made, there are reduction in the investment in generation depending on which connection we are talking about. Now, if you look at the BIMSTEC, the grid MOU that has been signed, it clearly spells out that there is a need to have fair principle and mechanism to fully recover the cost and share benefits equitably, resulting from the reduction in the investment on generation, transmission system and fuel cost among the participating investing country. So, we need to work on some of these aspects, and it is very important to work on these aspects so that it builds confidence among the parties. Because if there is no clarity on how the benefits get shared and how the investment gets shared between the countries, sometimes it takes time for actual projects to happen. So I will again limit that fair allocation of risk of such projects and how these benefits get shared between countries. Some thought needs to be given on that. Another point I would like to make is that in the morning the speaker from in the morning just now the speaker from Bhutan mentioned that what exactly the objective we are looking at. Are we looking at energy security? Are we looking at RE integration and so on and so forth? When I was hearing that, I kind of felt that probably many people have many priorities as far as such trans-regional grid interconnection is concerned. But I think it will be I think appropriate that a detailed concept paper and white paper on this SARC, BIMSTEC and GCC and ASEAN interconnection is put on the table, because it is important to understand what are the key drivers that we are looking at. There could be 10-20 drivers, but let us understand what are the major drivers that kind of going to drive such interconnections. And I do feel that maybe India has quite a bit of policy, regulatory and legal requirement in place, but if you look at many other countries, probably they don't have such legal requirement in place. When I was looking into the Sri Lankan Electricity Act and so on and so forth, sometimes I hear from my Sri Lankan colleagues that probably they need to have some provisions of cross-border trade in some of the electricity acts or policies. And this I often hear from my Sri Lankan colleagues. So a kind of a broad-based policy review should be undertaken just to make it clear that where different countries stands as far as these particular things are concerned. Because while you have a grand vision of 20 to 30 years, it is important to see where we stand as far as this particular interconnection is concerned, and then find out the ways and means to overcome some of these issues. Another point I would like to make is that we discuss about the planning aspect of the interconnections. I think it's as and when it kind of reaches a particular stage, so to speak, I think that need to create some steering committee or task forces among the participating entities, so that some of these planning aspects is discussed across the table of these particular two transmission interconnections, that's the Oman and India and the Manipur, Myanmar and Thailand interconnection. So some sort of concrete mechanisms need to be put in place. And the last point I would like to make that since we are also working with BIMSTEC and trying to help them to develop some sort of a master plan or transmission master plan, so to speak, it will be a worthwhile exercise just to see how different regions are interconnected as far as transmission system is concerned, and maybe try to develop a broad-based regional transmission interconnection plan among all these countries, which can give a certain direction to the investor that these are some of the projects that may come up as we move forward. And the last point I would like to make that sometimes the investment community is not necessarily involved at the beginning of such discussions, and while these things take shape and it has its own what I should say, the policy issues are involved with it. It is important to involve the investor community from the beginning itself, so that there is a clear direction at which these particular projects are moving. To be very frank, even most of the feasible interconnection which are technically, economically sound take roughly 10 years to happen. And this is the reality if you look at the even let's say you take example of CASA project, 1000 project, which was pretty much, there was a fair bit of consensus among the parties to start, but then itself it took roughly 10 years just to begin the construction phase, so to speak. So these things takes time, so it is important that you start with a clear understanding about these projects, and there is a fair bit of both governing and institutional organization, both at the governing level as well as the operating level, to actually make some of these projects move forward. It's very crucial, because if you don't have that, then one could talk about the potential benefit, but if you don't translate into a the second step, so to speak, then the benefits probably will be just be a potential benefit. So it's important to take those steps so that you can start actually looking at the implementation of some of these projects. And the last but not the least, I would suggest that we are having this last year we have this interaction, and we have many people from the different countries, and then of course we are having this interaction after 1 year. But I feel that there is a need to have more frequent interaction on this topic, because if you really want to have those the three grids getting interconnected, I don't think just one interaction in a year is sufficient enough to clear some of these doubts, because there are lot of issues one can list out. So I would suggest that we need to have much more frequent interaction, maybe in a much more structured manner, not just the broad concept, but exactly what are the issues and how we should work on to address that. And I personally has seen in South Asia that when you discuss specific issues with the concerned people, and then you try to find a way out, that actually works. So one interaction in a year may not be sufficient to really what we are discussing, 3 regions and three grids and so on and so forth. So these are some of the comments I thought I will make, and I'll stop, and I'll be happy to answer any question if you have. Thank you.